Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's training on supporting Afghan newcomers with professional backgrounds. Let me take that again. Supporting Afghan newcomers with professional backgrounds, barriers, opportunities, and resources. There we go. This training is presented to you by Switchboard in partnership with Upwardly Global. Switchboard is a one-stop resource for refugee service providers in the United States. We will give a brief overview of Upwardly Global shortly. My name is Lauren Bowden, and I am Switchboard's Technical Advisor for Economic Empowerment. I'm joined by my colleagues Tigges Coleman and Rosalie Arndt behind the scenes, helping with technical needs. Here's a quick overview of your settings in Zoom. This is a Zoom webinar, and therefore you're joining on listen-only mode. You may switch your audio between your computer and phone at any time under audio settings in the lower left corner of your screen. Due to the very large size of the webinar today, we've disabled the chat box. However, you do have the option to send messages to the speakers and co-facilitators. Keep an eye on the chat for messages from Switchboard and links to various resources we'll be mentioning throughout. Please type your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll address them during the Q&A time. You can also click the thumbs up to vote for another participant's question. And lastly, I'd like to mention that today's session will run for an hour and 30 minutes, and it is being recorded. You'll receive an email with the recording, slides, and recommended resources within 24 hours. The webinar transcript, along with the recording, will also be posted on the Switchboard website within the following days. And with that, I am delighted to introduce to you our amazing speakers, Rebecca Fishman and Shabnam Manati. Rebecca Fishman is the Afghan Response Coordinator at Upwardly Global. She's a champion and promoter of economic empowerment, inclusion, and health and well-being across a range of global, regional, country, and community organizations that have improved the lives of vulnerable people in the US and abroad. Rebecca has experience working with UN agencies, international and community-based nonprofits, academic medical centers, universities, social entrepreneurships, and the public and private sectors. Shabnam Manati is an onboarding associate at Upwardly Global and a Generation Change Fellow through the US Institute of Peace. After graduating from Kandahar University with a bachelor's degree in English literature and language, Shabnam worked as a translator and a women's rights activist. She arrived in the United States in 2021 as part of Operations Allies Welcome, and she enjoys working with newcomers and rebuilding their professional careers. Over to you, Rebecca.
I'm on mute. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you to our Switchboard colleagues. It's been such an honor with you on this presentation. We're really happy to be here. I just want to give a special shout out as well to our colleagues Emily Hafferson and Malet Mamo from our Jobversity team. They are participating to help manage the Q&A section in the chat bot. Thank you, Emily and Malet. And I'll turn it over to Shabnam shortly. Just a brief introduction for those who are new to Upwardly Global. Our focus is on lifting refugee and immigrant professionals out of and underemployment into thriving wage jobs and careers that align with their skills and backgrounds. We started in 2000 and are the first and longest serving group working in this space. We provide three main services. First is free, virtual, and individualized and industry-aligned job coaching. Second is employer partnership and thought leadership. And third is our capacity building initiatives through the Jobversity program, which you'll hear more about. Next slide. And we have two main objectives for the session. Shabnam, in just a moment, will be covering objective one, which is to describe the backgrounds of Afghan professionals in the US and some of the barriers and challenges they face in rebuilding their careers. After that, we'll focus on drilling down in some of the targeted programs, resources, and tools for working with this population, including a new technical assistance opportunity that we're excited to share more about later on. So with that, I am so pleased to introduce you to my colleague Shabnam to jump in with Objective 1. Shabnam, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Hello, everyone. And this is such a pleasure moment meeting you all amazing people. And thank you so much for joining us today. Once again, my name is Shabnam Manati, and I'm one of the new Afghan refugees that recently resettled in the United States. And currently I'm working as onboarding associate for Upwardly Global, where we work with the new refugees and immigrants to help them rebuild and restart their careers in the country. And today, I am really excited to present some of what we have learned from our working with the Afghan professional community, including opportunities and barriers the Afghan newcomer face while rebuilding and restarting their careers in the US. And we hope by the end of today or by the end of this session that we will have a better understanding of the Afghan refugees and the ways to support them on their employment journey or to rebuild and restart their careers in the country. Next slide, please. Thank you. So before I go to the next slide, we would like to get a feel of your familiarity with today's topic. So I would like to ask you all that how familiar are you with providing employment services to refugees and immigrant newcomers with mid or high skill background? So please rate your answers from 1 not familiar at all to 5 very familiar.
Shabnam, do you see the result?
Yeah, I do.
I think that pretty much is a good rate, so we can move on to the findings.
Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for your answers. Let's talk about the. Can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for your answers. So let's talk about the professional background of the Afghan newcomers to the country. And because there is limited national data on the professional background of the Afghan newcomers, I'm going to share some of what we have observed from our work at Upwardly Global over the past 14 months. So from our experience, we estimate that 25% of the Afghan newcomers are highly educated, having a college degree and English language proficiency. Of the working population, then this is about 10,000 Afghan newcomers total across the country or across the US. And we projected that what the economic impact could be if all of these newcomers find employment at their skill levels. Our average job seeker placement is around $63,000 per year, which translates to a total economic contribution of more than $600 million. And based in our experience, that will not be possible without inclusive employment opportunities and access to skill-aligned roles. So the top industries for the Afghan job seekers placed by Upwardly Global, what kind of experience do these professionals have? And as in previous slide, I mentioned that more than 25% of the Afghan newcomers are highly educated, having a bachelor's degree and master's degree. And from our work, we learned that the top Afghan professional industries, as you can also see on the screen, are IT, engineering, business, logistics, admin, and more. That many of these industries are actively recruiting, meaning that our job seekers often have in demand skills of the job market. Now, let's talk about the employment barriers faced by the Afghan newcomers or by the newcomer professionals. Throughout our work, we find out that, however, nearly half of the Afghan professional community or the Afghan newcomers are well educated and have language proficiency and professional experience from their home country, but still they face so many barriers. And because of these barriers, many of the job seekers often find themselves unemployed or underemployed. So they need some sort of employment opportunities, networking and training access, skill building opportunities, through which the Afghan newcomers build a network and advance their skills as important component for rebuilding their career in the country. And as you can also see on the screen, that there are certain things contributing to that, such as the process for finding a job can be very difficult, and it is very different from their home country, and it is hard to navigate without support or without training. And the second one, or the next one, is licenses and certification do not always transfer. And we will see an example of this throughout the presentation of an Afghan doctor who is trying to find a job who is trying to work in the US in her own field. And also, I can also give an example of my own work, that when I'm working with my job seekers, I almost always get the question of degree evaluation or transferring their degree, that how degrees do or do not transfer to the US system, or to the US system. So, and in addition to that, job seekers who are proficient in English, as I said before, but still there are some job seekers that they are not proficient in English, and they still need support in that term. Again, I will give an example of my own job seekers that I work with them. So I face with so many job seekers who are highly educated and have very a very powerful professional background, but still they have trouble in English. They do speak a very basic English, but still they need support in knowing or in having English language proficiency in terms of business, medical, or other specific settings and need some additional practice. In addition to that, I mean, in addition to all the barriers I mentioned, there can be significant gaps in job seekers' resume during resettlement, trying to find work, or while they are working a survival job, hiring managers may overlook candidates based on that. And of course, we know that there can be significant bias among employers who may be less familiar with the norms and standards for hiring individual trained internationally. So as we know that networking is a very common way to find a job in the US. So as I said before, helping the Afghan newcomers build a network and advance their skills are very important components in rebuilding their careers in the US. So these are the areas that we try to focus on helping job seekers with, and as well as working with employers to share best practices for training and hiring refugees and immigrants. So differences in professional norms. In our work, we are noticing certain differences in professional norms that are different for a newcomer compared to someone who is already living in the US. We are seeing certain differences that probably come as normal or natural to a US professional, but newcomers really need to adapt to it. And we think these things can be achieved through trainings, and some skills can be improved, especially around interviewing, networking, even eye contact. You can see on the screen that how it is normal for a US professional to use the term I when he or she is talking about professional achievements from the perspective of speaker, while in other cultures and in other countries that might be not good, or it is somewhat bragging or rude. So they come with the approach of we, or they use the term we when they are explaining professional achievements. Those differences can be easily improved and taught. There are things that we are noticing. Of course, there are more, but these are the things that, again, can be improved with training, and then that will help them succeed in their new jobs. In the next slide, you will see that we are, next slide. Yeah, so in this slide, you will see that we are setting the expectations. What would people expect about the US professional work culture, from the way people communicate to the issue of respecting time and respecting promises, to the way people dress, or we can also say the dress code, to how we can navigate an organization culture from a non-profit world to a corporate world to the government world. Each of these places get its own culture, and we think those are the barriers and at the same time opportunities for training. So these are all the things that both service providers and job seekers can be trained about. Mock interviews, for example, are a really good way to help job seekers practice answering US-style behavioral interview questions, making eye contact and explaining resume gaps and demonstrating confidence. Next, thank you. And some additional consideration for the Afghan newcomers, in addition to what I just mentioned in the previous slide, there are still certain things that are very, I should say, very specific or very unique to the Afghan newcomers. And it is, again, something we witnessed, and you can also see on the screen, but the trauma of war, displacement, navigating job market while they're also trying to find housing, enrolling their children to schools. Of course, access to technology is another point. You can see all these points on the screen, but still there is a point that I really want to highlight, and that is specific to the Afghan population. And the Afghan population might need a little bit of time so they can do their paperwork, you know, when they come to a new country and they are either asylum seekers or have refugee status. They need to process some paperwork. They need to process their immigration status. They need to understand their status. So we must understand all those things that come in addition to the two previous slides that I just talked about. So let's take a second to recap here and make this more interactive. I want to ask you a question that how does this resonate with you? And have you seen such differences and barriers with your clients? Have you witnessed something that should be, and that is not in this list and should be added to the list? So you can add your answers to the chat, please.
Actually, Shabnam, since it's pretty easy to use the Slido, if you are comfortable going to a web browser and going to slido.com and entering the code 3683470, which is on the screen, that would be great. Or you can also take your phone and scan the QR code that is showing on your screen. Thank you. And I could see that people are already using and utilizing this.
Okay, great. So do we have time for that? Do we need to give time, or no, we can continue?
If you want to acknowledge maybe a few responses that people have, and then we can move on to the next slide.
Oh, okay. So I see many of the answers. Thank you so much for your participation. It is really great. So I see some answers from our participations, like high skills, low English, again, lack of English, employer bias, delayed documents, and again, educational documents, cultural and gender roles, degree verification, certification, length of time to get a job, and time management. So there are a lot of answers I can see on the screen. So yeah, thank you so much for your answers. And again, the goal of this section was to introduce you to Afghan professional population in the US and to highlight some barriers and opportunities they face in finding employment at their skill level. And we will have more time for questions and answer section to answer any question you may have. So now I would like to introduce or to transfer it to Rebecca to talk about some specific program, tools, and resources to support these job seekers. Thank you so much. And Rebecca?
Thank you so much, Shabnam. That was great. And I've never seen the Slido in action before. That was really wonderful and illuminating to see some of the patterns and trends emerge. We'll look forward to hearing more in the Q&A discussion later on. So switching to objective 2, I'm trying to bring, the goal is to try and bring some practical tools and resources to help build the capacity of service providers like you to do this work. So next slide, please. So I'd like to introduce Sohaila, one of our job seekers who has consented to sharing both her photo and story with us. I understand that she and Shabnam are also friends. Sohaila, Dr. Sohaila, is a surgeon. She was one of a few women in her field in Afghanistan. She found her way to Upwardly Global. Some of you may have already worked with physicians and other clinicians who are trying to relicense in the US. If you haven't, it is a very long, expensive, difficult process. Individuals have to repeat their residency in full if they get a placement, which is not easy. So again, trying to make this webinar interactive, we're hoping you can enter in chat or the Slido if we have another one, some of the steps that you might take in working with Sohaila. I see some folks are typing. Yes. We'll just take a couple of a minute to go through this. Recertification, health boards, career goals in the US, absolutely. Shorter term skills and training, scholarships. Yes, yep. All of the above. I'm seeing a lot of themes around the degree evaluation, recertification, and in particular, yes, we'll definitely talk more about that shortly. Mentorship, these are all wonderful ideas. Switch work, oh, okay, that's great. So yes, we did all of that. So thank you all for those contributions. Here's just sort of a quick snapshot of how we worked with Sohaila. Our model includes individualized job coaching. So we have team members on board who specialize in healthcare and are trained and equipped to work with physicians and other clinicians, really trying to articulate their vision, ambitions, and goals for the US. For healthcare practitioners in particular, we do have many folks who want to relicense and will ultimately go down that pathway. In the shorter term, people need work. So we've done a lot of, we put a lot of effort into thinking about some of the shorter term skilling pathways and opportunities that will leverage the clinical background of these job seekers. So how we frame this is we focus both on the shorter and longer term goals and really try to build a customized plan and strategy for each job seeker. So Sohaila was open to reskilling. We have a training program in clinical research that she completed. In some of her training in Afghanistan, she was doing research and seemed really excited about this opportunity. We have a partnership with one of the top medical centers, academic medical centers in New York City, through which we have what we call a midternship to hire pathway. So Sohaila actually recently started a job. She went straight to a full-time role doing clinical research. So she's well on her way. Someday she may relicense to be a practitioner in the US. But she's got her game plan set and is working for an employer, giving her opportunities for networking and a chance to grow and contribute her expertise. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Here's another one of our alumni who's actually just joined the board, Upwardly Global. You get to see his smiling face. The purpose of this slide is to share some of our best practices around what we've found tends to work well. Striking a tone of optimism and encouragement tends to be helpful for us, again, focusing on both shorter-term needs for immediate employment to pay the bills, while balancing a plan, a vision, and a strategy for longer-term career growth and career rebuilding. It's a double-pronged approach, but we believe in our job seekers, and we want to give them all the tools and resources possible to do this. We've done a lot of work aligning our coaching with the labor market and sharing specific resources for the industry. We'll talk a little bit more about how we do that and how you can do that shortly. We work and continue to work to try and provide trauma-informed services. How we do that, I will say it's still a work in progress. We have a couple of wonderful social workers on our team. One I know is participating today. Hi, Isabel. They've done some internal training and capacity building around trauma-informed care and are working to educate the team on how we can show up in this space. I would say also this is not an easy area. We're trying to do more and looking for ways we can help support or make referrals for our job seekers who need a little extra care. We focus on career pathways. All of our job seekers have a plan and a strategy that they help contribute to and co-design with their job coach. We know where people are heading. We have expectations and timelines. We know this can take a while, depending on the industry, to rebuild the career. Shabnam's focused a bit on licensing and certifications and some of the challenges that can bring for our job seekers. We do often think about reskilling and upskilling. There are many resources that are available to all service providers to recommend. We'll talk a little bit more in later slides. As Shabnam talked about earlier, we also train around soft skills. Some of the differences around interviewing, behavioral style questions in the US can be unique and different. We do mock interviews. We help job seekers prepare before they speak with employers, and we find that really helpful. And we have a wonderful employer partnerships team. So we've been able to work with some companies to really leverage those who are interested in and have made hiring commitments for refugees and immigrants. We work with them. It's an ongoing basis to share some of the best practices and things that they're learning. So we can have the next slide, please. So we tried to design the presentation providing immediate resources and tools available to you if you're interested in doing more of this to provide employment support to Afghan newcomers. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act on their website. And I believe once we send out the slides, you'll have access to all the hyperlinks, and Rosalie is very graciously including it here as well. So their website is terrific with lots of programs, plans, and information. You can also find that on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. Sites like Glassdoor, Burning Glass, I think is another one. Even salary.com has some very useful information if you want to drill down and look at specific roles and pathways. And I know that there is also a push in the industry to automate some of this, bringing artificial intelligence into career planning and identifying pathways. So we hope these might be some tools you can look into. Excuse me. There are groups that have made really wonderful commitments to hire Afghans and other newcomers. Our colleagues at Welcome.us have a welcome exchange where there are job postings there. We encourage you to make sure that your job seekers see that. Our colleagues at the Tent Partnership are also doing wonderful work globally at the local level, connecting with your workforce development board. Some of the local employers is also a great way to go. And thank you also, Rosalie, for sharing the links there. We can go to the next slide. Technology and digital resources. We know one of the barriers and challenges has been around access to technology or inconsistent access to technology. So just a reminder that public libraries are often wonderful resources. My local library in Durham, North Carolina has a wonderful career lab, always staffed with people who are willing and wanting to help provide career advice and connect job seekers to local opportunities. All of the services in libraries are often free. There are other groups. PCs for People offers free or heavily subsidized laptops. Our Afghan response portal has a wonderful resume builder tool where job seekers can type in some basic information and will help spit out a resume for them. As service providers, you can then take that resume and see if it needs any further customization. That portal also includes free access to Coursera and some of our other skilling and training offerings that's available to all Afghan newcomers free of charge. Other websites that are listed here, Live Career, Job Scan, Resume Worded, these are all free tools available to help really try to automate some of these resume development and job search processes. The next slide, please. Credential evaluation, we heard this, we saw this several times in the discussion of Sohaila. Shabnam has shared that she gets this question all the time. We have a wonderful partnership with World Education Services. They provide credential evaluation as well as career pathway guides and other wonderful information. Their Gateway program, if you're not already aware of it, offers this service free of charge for individuals from certain countries. Afghanistan is one of them. There are other services here as well. We encourage you to look into them. Know that this can take a little bit of time to evaluate the credentials, especially if documents were destroyed or lost and the organizations aren't up and running in the normal way. But these organizations should be able to help point you in the right direction. The next slide, please. So again, trying to make this interactive through the Slido platform. Tell us, for those of you who are already providing employment services, what's resonating here with you? And we'll give a minute or so for this before moving on. Great. Yeah, resume development. Yeah, credential evaluation is really huge. Classes. Yeah. Local job fairs. Yes, Welcome.us, I know has been hosting a series of job fairs in major metropolitan areas across the country. The government has organized welcome centers for Afghan newcomers across the country. There are some really great resources out there. And yes, to all of this around community support, relationships. Yeah, thank you for that. I think for the sake of time, we'll go to the next section. And we'll look forward to hearing some of this coming out more in the Q&A part. Transportation. Lauren, Rosalie, do you want to move us to the next slide? Thank you so much. So I get the lucky role of sharing some information about a really unique new opportunity through the Jobversity and Switchboard partnership. We are providing a training and technical assistance opportunity. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about that. This will be a capacity building initiative focused specifically on just what we've been talking about, coaching and employment support for Afghan professionals. Individuals, organizations who will participate in this will receive dedicated support, coaching and guidance from our wonderful colleagues in the Jobversity team, as well as access to all the licenses and resources and dashboards to make this happen. And the next slide highlights the eligibility criteria and includes a link where you can apply, hopefully by Friday. We encourage you to get your survey in. This is open to ORR grantees, current grantees with at least one employment coach or career advisor on staff. You have to be supporting Afghan job seekers. There is a time commitment here, and we can't already be working with you. We definitely encourage you to check out the link by Friday, please, and get your application in. I think that's it. Great, so thank you so much. We are hoping to open it up for Q&A now.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So now it's time for our Q&A session. We've been receiving a lot of great questions in the chat throughout, and so I'm going to start with some of our most voted on questions. So one question that we've gotten in several different iterations is around specifically medical professionals. And so I've seen a few different iterations, but essentially the question goes like this. There's a shortage of medical professionals in the United States, and we have a lot of clients who are arriving with medical experience. Some of them have worked as physicians, some have worked as doctors, a dentist, etc. Do you all have any recommendations for how to figure out whether or not that person has the option to sort of fast track their way back into a medical career, or whether or not they have to totally start over?
I'm happy to take that question. That was my initial entry point into Upwardly Global, actually earlier in the pandemic, thinking about pathways for our healthcare job seekers in particular. There is a physician shortage in the US. There are many groups working very actively to advocate for changes and reform to the licensing process. We're seeing wonderful examples in states like Illinois and Michigan in particular. I think that's going to be a longer term prospect, but I am very heartened to see some of those efforts underway. In the shorter term, there is not a shortcut, unfortunately, to relicensing as a physician in the US. The Educational Council for Foreign Medical Graduates, ECFMG, is the regulating body. Individuals have to take the board exam, they have to repeat the residency. It's tough. For those who are open to it, we do have many job seekers who are successful on that path. For those who don't want to do that or haven't been successful, we have really been trying to focus on alternate paths. So are some of the physicians open to training to become a registered nurse in the US, for instance? That's a slightly different pathway. Clinical research, as with Sohaila, that's really emerged as sort of a hot and up and coming area because it leverages the clinical expertise of the professionals. We have others who are interested in health education, health literacy, community health work. Those pathways don't often pay terribly well, but are also really interesting opportunities to leverage the clinical experience. We don't like to see doctors working as medical assistants, emptying bedpans. You know, we really, I'm sure many of our attendees will also want to see their job seekers succeed in working at their skill level. And healthcare is such a tricky industry given that it's so regulated, but I think there's reason to be hopeful.
Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. And also, I would say in very rare not rare circumstances, but it's more of a piecemeal basis. There are programs in some states that will fast track folks back through training and certification. One that I know of is in Boston. There's a program where clients who were dentists in their home countries in 2 years can become dentists again. And then Erica Fisher put in the chat that there's an NGO in Washington, D.C. that works with Georgetown University Medical School and helps those folks become licensed doctors once again, and I presume on a faster track. So that does exist, but there is not, to the best of my knowledge, any overarching sort of database. You have to individually look in your context, your site, to figure out what options are available and what your state has allowed. Okay, another question. So this is about expectation setting. This is for any of you. What are your suggestions if a client does not believe or does not have very realistic expectations about their prospects? For example, maybe you do live in a state where your client cannot quickly become, for example, a dentist, but has an expectation that they're going to get a really high-paying job immediately and feels like any other job is beneath them. Yeah, so what are your suggestions for sort of helping expectation setting without sort of making folks feel really upset about the lack of prospects?
Shabnam, do you want to share some of your thoughts on this in the onboarding work?
My mind was just in the questions that were being asked in the chats. Can you please, repeat the question if you don't mind?
Sure, Shabnam. So the question is, do you have any suggestions with expectation setting? I saw a few iterations of this question. If you're working with a client who feels like that the jobs that you have available are really beneath them because they were able to access jobs that are really high paying and had a high amount of prestige in their home country, do you have any recommended sort of ways to frame and talk to clients so that you feel like the conversation is respectful and also it's realistic? So yeah, how do you set expectations at a place that is fair and realistic, but also doesn't just suggest to the client you can never go back to do what it is you want to do?
Yeah, this is a very common question I always receive from my job seekers. So I will answer it from my own perspective as a new refugee, as I told you, who recently arrived to the US. Everyone, all Afghan professional community, they were having very good jobs in their home country. As I told you, they were very high professionals and absolutely getting a very high paying jobs or having high paid jobs in their countries. So the only suggestion I give, and I think that is a reasonable and a good suggestion to the Afghan newcomers, and also not only my job seekers, but some of my other friends, I always suggest them to try to find a job or try to use the resources that help you to find a job related to your own profession, even if it is in a very entry level, or we should say in a very basic level, because at least they are aligned to their career path. And of course, I know that based on their experience, based on their professionalism, they will be able to find their way to the high professional jobs and high paying jobs very soon. So I suggest them to start a job. Don't think about the payment. Start the job which is related to your profession, at least in entry level, because it is the path that you're on and you can improve. And I also give this suggestion to my job seekers as well. They tell me that For example, I had my own organization in my country. I'm in Afghanistan. I was working as a secretary minister for such a ministry, and I told them that I know that you have all these experience. You have you are this. I mean, you are such professional, but still, you have. It is a new country with a very different professional difference from my country or from our country. At least we have to start from a place, and I know that you can improve. You will definitely improve based on the professionalism that you have.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I think that that sounds exactly right. Transferable skills, and also just sort of that future orientation that, like, the way things are right now isn't the way they will always be. And a lot of what you have brought over can be applied in a job right now. A lot of it is transferable, even if you can't start off as a doctor, unfortunately. Another question that we have gotten a few times is a question about paying for certifications or paying for vocational training or college, etc. Do any of you have recommendations for how our clients can access funding to be able to go and recertify or upskill?
I can take a brief stab at this, Lauren, but I also know we have a lot of talented experts participating on the call, so would love to see more of that shared in chat and ideas. I think, again, here there are a lot of local opportunities, local training programs and initiatives. We've seen many great examples across sectors and industries. There are some fields and some pathways where free training and skilling opportunities are available. We're making Coursera, Microsoft skills training, and some other programs accessible through our portal. We can re-up the link to that, and we're happy for you to show that to your job seekers and work with them. Our job seekers, we do offer targeted scholarship support, but I know that there are a host of programs. There are a range of programs across the country. There are employers that have committed to creating training to hiring pipelines. Get creative. There's just a lot out there, and we hope that trend will continue. And I'm so sure that many of our participants have other resources and ideas to share about that as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm just noting the Tigist put in the chat that we've opened up the chat so that if you have suggestions for your colleagues about kinds of resources, funding resources, go ahead and put those in the chat. I saw a suggestion about checking with your American Job Center. There are 2,500 American Job Centers throughout the country. It's more job centers than Target shopping centers. So that's a great way to be able to access some funds to connect with them if you haven't already. I think we have time for one more question. One question that we got was just about, well, let me make sure that it's the highest ranked before I...
Lauren, can I also say that we actually have a lot of time, so we still have another 30 minutes. So if we have more questions, we can field it. This webinar was announced for 90 minutes, so it allows us for more questions.
Oh, thank you, Tigist. You're right. I was thinking that we had to stop at 3. Okay, we have lots of time, so everyone can please feel free to put questions in the chat. So another question we had was just, how does Upload find funding to help clients reach their employment goals? So I think probably part of that was a question about certifications, but also it's just sort of a question about, like, how does Upload function? How do you build the kind of capacity to be able to do this kind of work?
That's a tough question to answer. I'm actually participating from overseas at the moment, but for all of my colleagues in New York, happening right about now or very soon is our annual gala. We do a lot of direct fundraising. We have a wonderful development team really focused on building our institutional partnerships and individual giving. We are always writing grants and seeking to grow and further our program in different ways. We're so honored to partner with Switchboard to help grow and cultivate our Jobversity program and to provide further training and technical assistance to the community and to make our tools and resources available. So those are some ways, I think, and perhaps my Jobversity colleagues want to offer a little bit more expertise on that as well.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yes, that's correct. We collaborate a lot with different funders, including federal funding, state funding, a lot of different private foundations who align with our mission, fund us, and we expand our work through those partnerships. For example, we're currently working with the on a program in New York, which is the Office of New Americans, funded by the state of New York to support nonprofit organizations throughout New York. And, you know, just one example of how we partner with state and local governments and federal governments to support our work.
Thank you, Malette. And I see Travis, thank you for your excellent suggestions. Yes to everything that Travis just said as well.
Okay, another question. So do you all have any recommendations for someone who arrives in the United States and they have not completed a university degree? So they're a few credits shy. What should that person do?
Shabnam, do you want to take that one as well?
Yeah, so it is a little tricky questions to be answered. That so if the person doesn't have university degree but have work experience, we can still help them. But if they do not have university degree and also do not have work experience, you know, it is very hard to find job in the US without any certification or without university degree. So we suggest them to go and get a college degree. I mean, to start getting high education. I don't know, what does Rebecca suggest to this? So this is my suggestion, because I feel it is very hard to find job in the US without having professional experience or high level education.
Just to add on that real quickly, I used to be a job coach as well. So just to share my experience in that area. Yes, there are a lot of community colleges and you know, universities who would consider the transcripts of other countries and universities and try to match what would be transferable from those transcripts to be able to continue their education here in the US. So there are really wonderful, you know, career consultation and student advisors that work in community colleges to support this kind of transition. So they don't necessarily have to start from scratch. They can transfer whatever they have gained in their home country and transfer them here and count them as count in their credits and then build on that to continue their education. It might not be exactly where they left off in their home country, but it would definitely chop off a lot of years of repetition.
And this question wasn't asked, but I would also say that if your client needs to get a high school equivalency in order to enter college. Consider seeing if your state, if there's a resource in your state where the client could take the HiSET, so a high school equivalency versus the GED. Obviously, both are high school equivalency, but what we have heard is that the HiSET tends to have a higher pass rate for our clients. So just something to consider if that's also something that maybe your client went to high school, but they didn't actually bring their physical diploma, or they need to get that education. Another question for you all. How do you recommend handling male clients? I think it could also be female clients who refuse to respect or listen to the advice of female employment specialists or job counselors due to different cultural views. So yeah, how do you suggest that folks work with this sort of difficult issue surrounding gender and gender dynamics that sometimes can make it difficult, and maybe there's respect issues, et cetera?
Shabnam, I'll add over to you.
We sometimes get those kinds of difficult situations, and I think the most important part is really education, understanding where they're coming from, we call it coaching with cultural intelligence. So we're understanding why that is happening, why they're refusing to take advice from female coaches or advisors would be the first step as a coach to understand and help them that this is not going to be the same situation here, and making it very clear what the rules are here and what kind of cadence is expected in terms of communication, what are the rules, expectation setting, really clear direction and coaching is important, not just about their profession and finding a job and soft skills, but also how do you just communicate politely in a professional setting, because they also would need it once they find a job. It's not only about their communication with their coaches, but also as they move on and find and work in a professional setting, that would be an important skill to have. So that is where the coaching also begins. So really important to make it clear that it's not an option, of course, it's the rules, and there are legal consequences to different actions, making it very clear that it's not only an option, but it is also an issue of being part of the community that they're living in. So it is mostly about how do you handle cultural differences, how do you understand it. So it is all about coaching with cultural intelligence.
Awesome. I think that's a spot on answer. Having empathy and understanding the entire context and providing that cultural competency. Do you all have any support or recommendations for individuals with less professional experience or without English proficiency? I know that's not your exact wheelhouse, but what do you do if someone maybe has great English, but not so much the professional experience? Or maybe they have great experience, but they don't have a ton of English proficiency.
Shabnam, do you want to walk through how you handle that through the onboarding team? And then I have some other ideas as well.
Yeah, so again, I encourage the individuals to learn English language if they don't have language proficiency, but they do have a professional background and educational degree. So it is the best way to get English classes. And there are so many sources for getting online English classes. And the best example can be Coursera. They can have English language courses through Coursera and some other resources.
Yes, and we thank you, Shabnam. And I know Shabnam and her colleagues often will sometimes through our internal processes, put an applicant on hold and encourage them to work on the English, upping the English proficiency a bit before they can really benefit from the program. Some of the initiatives that we shared earlier in the presentation, like the Welcome Exchange and the Tent Partnership. There are hiring initiatives out there that are open to individuals who may not have the professional backgrounds or the English proficiency. So there are some resources and services available. Our area of focus is really on the professionals, but I would say our portal was designed and we stood that up to try and help so we could offer something for individuals to take advantage of. So Shabnam highlighted how valuable Coursera can be. We're providing free access through the portal. So do check out some of the resources that are available.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So here's a question. It's a specific resource. I had not heard of it. Have any of you worked with Article 26 Backpack out of UC Davis to provide a safe and secure digital space for people's academic and career documents and diplomas? For example, it's not safe to have physical copies on them or the documents were destroyed. So I guess my first question is, have you all heard of this resource? And if not, do you have just any guidance for folks listening about how to make sure that documents are kept safe? I know that that's been something I've seen, is that clients are understandably very reticent to send these documents off to get evaluated, sending off their one and only physical hard copy.
Zach, Isabel, I've seen you in the chat. You have the expertise on this, so please contribute. Manati, do you have any more insight to share on the credential evaluation piece?
Yes, in terms of like a bit credential evaluation process that happens through World Education Services, which I personally went through myself, is a very smooth process in terms of document exchange, and they do not ask you to submit your original documents to them, and they use other ways to verify the authenticity of the documents. So there is no, I haven't seen any risk of working with them directly and providing that information directly to them, and they have different mechanisms to work with countries and universities that are difficult to reach, may have documents destroyed and so on. They kind of devised a way to verify those documents and provide a clear direction on what the equivalency would be in the US. So that is what the Gateway program is all about. If you see the list of countries that are mentioned on that, Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Ukraine, and Venezuela, countries who experiencing active uncertainty at this moment, and still job seekers and immigrants and refugees can find a way to evaluate their credentials through this Gateway program. So that is why it is designed and placed for. So I would say it is a very pretty secured process, and they can definitely, I can say that they can trust the organization to support them.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question from Mitra. She says, or he says, I'm a university professor and I've been brainstorming with my colleagues about how we can help open our classrooms for auditing involving refugees in our research projects and serving as a reference. So you all mentioned that you're working with a medical center in New York. Any interest to work with a university at a larger scale? So is Jobversity open also to universities?
I'll let Malet field that question.
Yes, we absolutely are. We do work with different educational institutions in general, like community colleges, especially colleges that serve immigrants and refugees in a special kind of way in terms of like supporting them to transition to their professional backgrounds, or it could be providing different classes, English language classes and so on. And among those participants, we often find that a lot of them may have like a professional background and educational background and might need a little bit of additional support to kind of land that dream job that they have been waiting for. So we do work directly with colleges and universities to facilitate that process through Jobversity. So anyone interested in connecting with me, I'll be happy to connect with them.
Malet, are there any other institutions that people might not immediately think are eligible that you just want to sort of touch, like let folks know, yes, you are eligible, please apply?
Are you asking for this specific switchboard partnership or just in general for Jobversity partnerships?
For Jobversity partners.
No.
Okay, just wanted to check.
No, for this particular switchboard partnership that we mentioned earlier, it is ORR funded. So the organizations need to be funded through ORR and other qualification requirements that we mentioned earlier. But as in general, we work with organizations, a variety of organizations, nonprofits, state funded initiatives, and educational institutions, everyone who is interested in supporting newcomers, immigrants, and refugees to support them with their workforce development.
Got it. Got it. Thanks. Okay, so another question. How responsive have state boards been in other states to allowing unofficial credential evaluations for licensure? So WES and some other credential evaluations will allow for clients to use unofficial copies of transcripts to be evaluated. I think often that's when a client has a digital copy, but not the hard copy, for example. But these are then marked as an unofficial credential evaluation. Are some states open to accepting these for licensure and in replacement of official credential evaluation? I guess my question to you all is, what have you seen? I know that this is probably a state-by-state basis, but do you have any general guidance on what people should be aware of if they have an unofficial credential evaluation?
I'll say I'm definitely not the best person to answer this, but I'm just noting that this seems to be, there are so many questions around credential evaluation. Perhaps a targeted conversation or resources might be available. I know we have Malet and some other experts participating today who may be better placed to answer that.
As far as my understanding goes in terms of, like, for example, the process with WES, if they have to deliver final results, it will be official evaluation transcripts that are evaluated officially, because they need to kind of compare what you have given them with the documentation that is provided from the universities themselves. So there is a verification process that goes through that. So that would count as an official translation of the transcripts and the degrees. But if it is not, I don't think the relicensing boards that I know of would accept unofficial transcripts. So I believe that needs to be verified by WES or other credential evaluation organizations as official.
I would also assume that probably more employer partners would be amenable versus states, although I'm sure that also is just going to depend on the state. But if an employer partner requires you to have some level of education, they might have more leeway and be able to more quickly and unilaterally make the decision that is accepted versus a more cumbersome bureaucratic process of getting your university system to accept it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It just means, I think that would be my general assumption.
Yes, that's spot on, because most of the employers, do not require any kind of, they don't even require, a lot of them do not even require an evaluated transcript. If you offer what you have, that would be enough in a way of proving that you have an educational background and professional background. This process is very intensive when it comes to relicensing, especially for medical professionals and other professions that require relicensing and board certifications.
Awesome, thank you so much. So here's a question from Carol. Many of us find ourselves out of our depth when working with highly skilled, highly educated professionals. Some coaching for us in identifying occupations where the transferable skills can be applied would be helpful. For example, they have gotten a lot of former diplomats, consular officers, and they don't have an embassy or a consulate in their area, I believe is the question. So I think the overarching question is, do you all have some advice for how to sort of broaden your knowledge base such that when you get a client who has a lot of specialized professional experience, might be a late career professional, how do you sort of educate yourself to be able to help that person on what their transferable skills are?
It's a really good question. And there are lots of ways to answer it. I would just say a sort of general theme that I've seen. Many of our government and nonprofit job seekers are doing really well. And I would say those who are based in the DC, Maryland, Virginia community in particular, where a lot of the government contractors and NGOs are in particular doing well. There are some wonderful job boards and resources so people can look at opportunities. There are, for instance, if someone has a background in monitoring and evaluation, I think that's it's so desirable right now, right? So I am so optimistic and hopeful about that pool of job seekers in particular. But as far as highlighting and thinking about the transferable skills, yeah, I wonder if my colleagues want to offer a little bit more of their insight and expertise there. Sometimes I would just say it's also like the project management skills. That's been a hugely popular training path and skilling pathway for us. And those individuals are doing really well with the placements. Shabnam, Malet, anything else to add?
Yeah, there are different kinds of career pathways that are developed by Upwardly Global as well as World Education Services in terms of how someone can transfer their skills to other types of jobs that that relate to their professional background and educational background. They might not exactly find the job that they used to do back home in their country or exactly the position, but most of the skills are transferable to different kinds of pathways. I think the example that was given by Rebecca earlier on, a lot of medical professionals, physicians who practice in their back home in their countries are now using their transferable skills to work in a research lab or different kinds of positions in different hospitals. The same goes for IT professionals and engineers and nurses. So there are a lot of different pathways that are suggested through career pathways through Upwardly Global, and also please check out the career pathways that are crafted by World Education Services, which are really great.
That's great. The other thing that I would add is that Mentors can be a really great help in this space. So if you have clients who are late career professionals and you don't know a lot about that professional field at all, calling on someone and asking them what they think to help you make a resume, to speak with your client can do a lot of things, can help educate you about that sector. Also, that person might be able to quickly tell you, hey, these skills, while you're right, this person can't just slot right back in where they were, these skills could transfer elsewhere, and here are some other positions that I can tell you about in this sector. And sometimes even help you find them a job. Sometimes they can provide that professional networking. The other thing is that earlier in this deck, I believe it was Rebecca talked about livecareer.com, which is a resume making resource. When you are making a resume with that resource, it does, and there are a few like this, it does suggest bullet points for specific roles, right? So maybe you don't know a lot about what it means to be a pipe welder, but that tool would generate the responsibilities of a pipe welder. So you could talk with your client to sort of figure out their expertise, even though maybe you know nothing about pipe welding yourself. Okay, awesome. Back to the chat. Another question. Do you all have recommendations for how, this is sort of what we're talking about, how to help Afghans build a professional network? What are some effective steps to help folks really form that network of folks that can help them with their career?
It's a great question. I know we have some resources specifically on our portal about just this, about networking, about the value of LinkedIn, so popular in the US. We have tools to help individuals build their profile and learn how to connect through that and other groups. So I would check out those resources. For starters, Shabnam, Malet, what else am I missing at this late hour overseas?
I would also say LinkedIn, which is a very huge community where, someone has a new refugee can build a very great professional network.
Yeah, I'll second that. The Upwardly Global Career Coaching Program is hyper-focused on networking skills and developing and expanding the job seekers network, because that is one of the really lacking areas and barriers that newcomers face, because they are, obviously newcomers and they don't have a lot of professional network in the US. So building their professional network is one of the areas that is really given a high attention in our direct service program. So we connect our job seekers with different professionals through different networking events, virtual, in-person, all kinds of different events, job fairs, and interviews, mock interviews, and speed networking events and things like that. So that I would suggest that if the job seekers qualify for the program, that would be a great start.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I think that we have time for maybe one more question, maybe two. One question from Isabel: what options are there for asylum seekers who have to wait 150 days before they can apply for work authorization? My initial thought is that they will not be able to initially work for that 150 days. So they probably would benefit instead from some like soft skill training, et cetera. But I'd love to hear what you all think.
I think, if they don't have a work permit at that point, obviously getting an official job would be challenging. It's not possible. So, the most important area to focus would be upskilling and reskilling opportunities, to be able to, craft their skills and make sure that they kind of understand what the transferable skills are, what are the pathways, what are the additional things that they could do while waiting for their work permit to come in. There are a lot of different trainings, short-term trainings on Coursera and different platforms that would really support them once they get their work permits, and they could continue adding them on their resumes, and that would give them a real shot at finding a job that is equivalent to their skill level.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And a question that I've seen, I think this might be more for Tigist and Rosalie. We have gotten so many awesome resources. The chat has been really active, and some folks were asking if it would be possible for us to synthesize all of the various resources and send those out alongside the deck and the recording.
Thanks, Lauren. We'll have to figure out the resources and see, just because the resources that we do share are vetted by our funder ORR, so we may not be able to publicly share it, but we'll figure something out. And at the very least, if you are interested, do reach out to Switchboard at rescue.org, and I'll put that email in the chat, and we could email it directly, but we'll see what we can do. Thanks for that request. I've been gathering it and saving it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So I think that's the time we have for Q&A today. I hope that by the end of this session, you all have been able to describe the backgrounds of Afghan professionals in the US and the barriers and opportunities they face in rebuilding their careers. And also, you are able to identify programs, resources, and other tools for working with this population, including technical assistance through Switchboard's Jobversity. We put together some recommended resources, as we were just talking about. The full list of resources used for this webinar is going to be shared out with you in the follow-up email. Before signing off, I hope you'll take a very short moment to complete our feedback survey. The survey takes less than a minute to complete, and it's incredibly helpful for improving our trainings going forward. Depending on how you join this webinar today, the survey itself might be already open in your web browser. Tigist also dropped the survey link into the chat, so you can just click the link to access it. I'll give you just a second. Okay, and finally, here is Switchboard's contact information. I do hope you'll stay in touch and join us for future trainings. Thank you so much again for joining today, and a huge thanks to our speakers, Rebecca Fishman and Shabnam Manati, and to our co-hosts, Tigist and Rosalie. Thanks, everyone.